All right, good morning. Today we are going to be doing a video on coloring the Canteen purse. Okay, now the body of the purse is going to be made out of a colored leather, but we did all this tooling on the ring that goes around the inlay, and then also I went ahead and tooled up a strap because I want to color it all at once. I don't want to color one of them and then go back later after the videos are done and have to redo the coloring on the strap or something. Anyway, it's all tooled up, it's ready to go. I walked around the warehouse this morning. I have an alligator that I really want to play with. It is like a peanut butter color. It came from Von Gators. It is a really nice gator, and I really have been wanting to do something with it. When I made the original one of these, I wanted to use the peanut butter in it, but it just didn't match the other colors that I had chosen for the main body and for the ring. So anyway, this time I kind of chose colors that I thought would go with that piece of gator. So let's show them to you. So what I think I'm gonna do, and this is one of those things, guys, when you're playing with colors and things, sometimes it's gonna go together and it's gonna be a knock it out of the park, you know, great. Other times it's like, maybe that works. And then other times you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? You know, and especially if you're doing something like cutting up an alligator, oh my gosh, what have I done, you know? So anyway, all that being said, I have selected one of my new favorite leathers that we're carrying here, and this is our Rustic Ranch. We had our Legacy Ranch leather, but we had it also tanned where it has no sheen to it. It's got a lot of pull up, but no, it's not shiny at all. So what I'm looking at is that peanut butter gator with this, and for the dye on the borders of the ring and then the background of the tooling, I'm gonna do a dye called Spanish Brown. It's a very pretty brown, and I'm hoping that it sets apart, like these two colors up next to each other are meh, but I'm hoping with that Spanish Brown to break them up, I'm hoping it'll really set it off. And then I'm also going to look at where this bag will have piping, and I'm gonna look at what color the piping should be. Should I keep it with the Rustic Ranch color, or maybe even a color that kind of matches the Spanish Brown part, just to kind of keep the colors flowing and tie everything in together, okay? So without further ado, I'm going to be airbrushing the Spanish Brown onto the border, and then I'll use a paintbrush and do all my background work with a paintbrush. So in this video, we'll show you what all that looks like, and then at the end of that, we'll antique everything, and in my mind, it looks glorious already. We'll see how it looks on the leather. So I'm gonna reset my, my workbench here for masking up this piece, and I'll be right back. All right, so I have my fine line masking tape. This is a masking tape we found a few years ago. I really like this masking tape because I can put it on the leather. I can see through it to use my scalpel and cut out any areas that I don't want to mask. But also when I pull it off the leather, it's just strong enough to stay on the leather when I need it, but when I pull it off, it doesn't like rip the fibers of the leather up. And also I've never ever had it leave any sticky residue on the face of the leather, which is extremely important. I'm sure there's other kinds of tape out there that do that, but I have had the best luck with this stuff. Problem is, they quit making it. Scoured the internet, bought every roll I could. I literally have like a pallet of this tape, but once it's gone, it's gone. It's really great stuff. We have it in two different widths. It is on our website. And then I, of course, have squandered away my own box of it so that I'll make sure I have enough forever. So anyway, I mean, it's masking tape. We're gonna mask this project off, okay? And the first thing actually I'm gonna do is go ahead and pull that ring out of the middle. Okay. Oop. Trying to pull the tape. Now, it doesn't matter. I could go ahead and pull the tape off of this if I wanted to. Again, it doesn't really matter. If I were not going to line, if there wasn't going to be anything sewn to the back of this, then I would be very concerned about pulling the tape off the back. I would leave the tape on it because I would want to make sure that dye and antique and stuff doesn't get on the back of the leather. But since this is going to be sewn to the bag itself, I don't care. Yeah, matter of fact, you know what? It might even just make it easier and cleaner to pull this off. Now, when I'm pulling my tape off my tooling leather, I want to be very, very careful that I'm not pulling the tooling leather off the tape, okay? And I know that sounds dumb, but if I were to pull on this leather and not on this tape, I risk stretching and malforming, I guess would be the word, my leather. But basically, I need it to be the shape and size that it is because it is cut to fit. So if I were to just hold the tape down and yank the leather, I would probably stretch it and then it wouldn't be shaped right. Okay. All right. All right, so again, I'm just masking this off. So, never done a round ring like this. It'll be a great little experiment to kind of figure out how to do it the best without wasting tape right here in the middle. And then the other thing with this tape is I don't like to overlap it too much because then it makes it more difficult to cut and mask. Okay, now that being said, I just left a little spot there. Anyway, and the good news is I'm only really trying to mask the tooled area on this. So the border is what I'm going to end up trimming anyway. So yeah, so I can do this with the tape and keep me from having to just mask the whole dang thing, right? Okay, and I'll show you in just a second when I pull it back off the desk, but like I said, with this masking tape, I can see my tooling through the tape, and that is highly desirable for what I need to do because I'm going to take a scalpel and I'm going to cut the tooling, cut along the edges of the tooling portion so that I can remove the excess tape and just leave it in the tooled areas. I always found masking tape a marvelous, yeah, it's thin and it's weak, but it sometimes can be so hard to tear for some reason, and I just never understood that. We'll just chalk that up to science, maybe. All right, now, just so I can start moving this piece around, I'm going to just cut off my excess tape that I have where it's basically taped to my desk now. Okay, and I've got a scalpel here with a very fresh blade. When I'm about to do this with tape, I always make sure I have a very fresh blade in my scalpel just because blades are cheap and why fight with a dull blade when you're trying to do fine work like this. Okay, now again, the only reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to airbrush my die onto my border. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I use the airbrush to do it, I get a more accurate color. Okay, a lot of the time if I were to use a dauber or something like that to put my die on, by the time I actually got the die even and without streaks and stuff like that, then it would be too dark because I would have put many, many layers on it. And so yeah, I like to airbrush when I can. It does take a few more minutes to set up the airbrush and get everything ready, but the end result is worth it. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is just take my fingers here and really stick that tape to the tooled portion, okay? I'm not trying to rub on the area where I'm about to pull it off. I'm just trying to rub into the area of the tooled portion so it doesn't accidentally come off areas I don't want it to. Okay. And again, you can see the tooling right through the tape. That's why I love this tape. And then I just take my scalpel here, and let's start right here, and I'm just going to cut right along that edge where I've tooled my border. Okay, and then I have to be cognizant of these areas where the tooling comes out of the border, and I need to cut around those. Sure hope the microphone didn't pick that up, but man, my stomach just grumbled. It's breakfast time. These areas these times when I come to the shop super early, I'm here for a few hours before I go and get anything to eat. Okay, and this is a very easy process. I have done it quite a few times, so I do have some practice at it, of course. But it's not difficult to cut this tape right where you want it cut. And then the good news is, it's just tape. If you accidentally cut it in the wrong area or something, retape it. Okay. Now I started right here where this flower goes over the border here. I'm going to go back and cut down the other side now. And again, you can feel the difference when you're cutting one layer of tape versus, where it's overlapped and stuff. It's just easier to only cut one layer. So that's why I try not to overlap the tape too much when I'm applying it. So now I'm cutting around the outside of the border. And there goes my stomach again. It's right under where this microphone is, so I'm sorry if you're hearing that. But hey, that being said, I go to the little local cafe every morning at about 7:30 and have breakfast if anybody wants to join me. It's right around the corner. A group of little old retired guys every morning in there drinking coffee, and I sit with them while I have my breakfast. A lot of wisdom gets thrown around that table, but a lot of BS does too, so it's a good time. Almost done. See how we did here. So I always pull it up really slowly, and that way I can continue with my finger just pushing down areas that I'm not wanting pulled up. There we go. almost done. All right, then the last thing I'm going to do is take a modeling spoon or a stylus or something and just really press that tape down into that border. Like that. And that'll help to seal those edges as I airbrush, okay? Now, it's not even daylight outside, and I do my airbrushing in the back of the warehouse. And the back of the warehouse kind of depends on natural light. It's got some lights in it, but if the sun's out, it'll be a lot better. All that being said, when we come back, we'll be set up in the back of the warehouse on a piece of scrap cardboard where I can do my airbrushing. This will obviously be taped up, but so will my strap. And the strap's actually going to be much easier because it's just one long piece. But anyway, it'll also be taped up in this exact same manner so that I can do them both up. Whoop, and the piece that didn't get torn off. Okay. Alright, so you can kind of see where I've gone with my stylus here and push that down into that border. So I've got a very accurate masking of the area I want to dye versus the area I don't. Again, I'm going to come back with a paintbrush though and dye my background also. I could sit here and cut all of that out with a scalpel and airbrush it as well, but there's just no chance in the world that I'm going to sit here and do that because I can do it much faster with a paintbrush than I can using my scalpel to cut out all that background work. So, it's not that I'm lazy, it's that I'm efficient. Alright, so when we come back, we'll be in the warehouse and we'll do some airbrushing. See you soon. Alright, so here we are in my airbrushing studio, which is also known as a piece of scrap cardboard over our Happy Hippo dumpster here, right in the back of the warehouse. Okay, we've got a decent little amount of natural light in here, so we're good now. Anyway, I'm going to use Spanish brown dye, and I'm going to airbrush it like we talked about before. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our airbrush. I'll make sure it's turned on before I start. There we go. This is one of our cordless airbrushes that we sell. I really love this thing. We have had a couple of issues with a couple of them, but anybody that's had an issue with them, we've promptly replaced it. And but for the most part, these are amazing airbrushes, and they're easy to clean, they're easy to use, and they work out good. I forgot to bring some paper towels out here with me. That's normally paper towels and gloves are two of my rules when I'm touching dye, but I forgot the paper towels, so we'll try not to drip anything. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to airbrush the exposed leather. Very easy to do. When I am airbrushing, I try not to ever stop in an area, like let's say I'm going back and forth on a belt. I try not to stop in any kind of an area that, or reverse directions, where when you do that, it would make that area darker. It's hard to explain, but if I'll do it on the cardboard here. If I'm going all the way across something, I try to go from off the project to off the project, because if you go back and forth like this, then those end areas are going to be darker and more saturated with dye than the, you know, if you go straight across. It's people that paint a lot know all about this stuff. I had to learn it because I don't paint a lot. So anyway, Spanish brown is a very nice color brown. It's not super dark by any means, but I am going to get a good coating on here, so it will look a little darker. It's a real nice kind of a reddish brown. It's a nice color. All right, so now I'm going to do this entire length of strap here. Start out down here on the end, and I'll do big circles. And then I'm just going to slowly go along. Oof, that got bad right there. I'll have to fade that in a little bit where I just stopped right in the middle of the dang thing, like I said I wouldn't do. All right, start on the other end here. And with an airbrush, consistency is key, okay? So that's it, guys. That's airbrushing. In a minute, we'll come back and we'll be back at the desk. We'll remove the masking tape, and we'll see how we did. Hopefully, there's no surprises. So that's it. That's airbrushing right there. So like I said, we'll be back on the desk here in just a minute, and we'll finish out dyeing the background, and then we'll start antiquing process. All right, so here we are back at the desk, and I'm going to carefully lift this tape out of place and see how we did. Hopefully there's no big surprises. Now when doing this, even though I'm wearing gloves, I'm actually going to wipe my gloved hands off on a paper towel, because the dye on that tape doesn't dry as fast as the dye on the leather does, because it doesn't soak in. So I just want to make sure that I'm not about to take a fingerprint full of dye and put it somewhere it doesn't belong. Okay, now we've got one little piece of tape still on there. Excellent. I am very pleased with how this has turned out so far. As long as I don't drip dye while I'm doing my spot dyeing, I'll be okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a tiny paintbrush, and I'm going to take my bottle of dye, and I'm going to dye all the background behind the floral pattern there. Okay. I have just a regular artist paintbrush here. It's not super expensive, but I don't buy the cheapest ones I can find, because cheap ones generally you'll have a lot of extra fibers and stuff, and it gets real messy real quick. I'm doing this on a piece of paper for two reasons. One, if I accidentally spill, of course, then hopefully the paper will help keep my desk clean. And then two, when I have a big old glop of dye on here, I may blot it on this paper to get rid of a giant blob of it, so that when I go to and put it into the leather, I don't too much dye in a small area, it spreads. Okay, and we're gonna kind of go through that here. So when background dyeing like this, if you're using a brush, you don't want to start out in that tiny little corner down there. You want to start out away from it and then work your way toward it, because the dye is going to spread a little bit. All right. Now look at the difference in, this is the same color of brown that I used on the ring, and on the ring, the borders, it is actually, and that's the color it should be when I airbrushed it. But here we have a very high concentration of it, where I just dyed that little background piece, and it's much darker. And that's what I'm talking about with why I like the airbrush, is because you will get very dark results using a dauber or something like that. And man, I am way too shaky for this today. This may not turn out too pretty. When I'm doing tiny areas, I try to do them after I've done a larger area, but without re-dipping my brush in dye. And that way, hopefully, I don't overdo that tiny little area. Okay, so I'm going to do just a couple more small areas here and show you. And then I will turn off the camera. I'll complete the floral carving here, and then also on my shoulder strap. Okay, now one thing to keep in mind is this is also going to be antiqued. So Your dye job while you do this can look a little bit sloppy, unfortunately, and the antique is really going to help to take care of that later, because the dye is very difficult sometimes to get up into those tiny areas because you don't want to accidentally overdo it. So anyway, the antique is a great saving grace on that, and it will color in those areas for you that you weren't able to reach with the dye. So that's another reason people use antique, is because it hides a lot of things. So again, I'll turn off the camera and I'll just keep on doing exactly like I'm doing here. And when we come back, this one and the shoulder strap will be done, and we'll discuss what's next. All right, got all my background dyeing done, and now I need to do what's called resisting, okay? This is my favorite resist right here. From the Be Natural folks. It's called RTC, Sheridan Resist and Finish. I like this resist a lot because it doesn't leave the leather super shiny, but it does a really good job of resisting. Most things that do a good job of resisting also leave the leather super shiny. For years I was using Fiebing's Pro Resist, and it's not a bad product, but it does leave it shinier than I like. But honestly, I was using it because that's what we had here in the store. But now we have this here in the store too. So I'm going to take a sponge here. I don't have a sink, but I need the sponge to be damp, so I'm just going to spray it really good with my water bottle to get it nice and damp. Okay? Then I'll grab me a paper towel and get the excess water off my gloves. I'll be excited when I finish this process. I can finally take these silly gloves off. I don't like wearing them, but I also don't like brown dye all over my hands, because then people assume I don't know how to use the bathroom properly. So that's how that goes. Anyway, so applying the resist is super easy. I'm going to get a really healthy amount of it on my my sponge here, and then I'm just going to slather it on. Okay, and then I'm going to get more on my sponge, and I'm going to do it again. Okay, now depending on what kind of dye or paint work you've done here, you may not want to apply it in this same fashion. If I had painted it, I would be either spraying this on or dabbing it on, but I wouldn't be wiping like this, because then you'll destroy your paint job. Okay, but all I did is some dyeing. It's not a super dark dye, so I have no problem using this on it. If the dye was like red or something like that, I also wouldn't be slathering this on here, because it would help smear that red dye, and I don't like that. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to do the ring, and I'm going to do the entirety of the shoulder strap here. Now, I'm going to put this coat on, and within about 10 minutes, it's going to feel dry. And then I'm going to put another coat on, okay? Then I'm going to let it rest for probably 8 hours or so, all right? I tell people it's kind of like painting your car. It looks dry, it feels dry. Don't go driving down a dirt road just yet, okay? You need this stuff to kind of cure on there and get good and stuck, because you're going to be rubbing all over it with paper towels or shearling or whatever your preferred method is for applying your antique. So, yeah, it's good to let it cure and settle in like it needs to. Okay? So there we go. Again, that was the first coat. I'm going to wait about 10 minutes. I'm going to put on a second coat the exact same way, and then 8 hours or so from now, we will come back and actually antique this, but I won't antique it before that. So we'll see you in a little while. All right, so got all my background dye done, and I RTC'd it, and I've let it set for several hours now. So now it's time to apply antique, okay? Now I'm gonna use Fiebing's Antique Paste. This is the dark brown color. It's going to bring that dye down just a little bit, make it a little bit darker. It's going to, of course, darken in all the tooling like it should. But anyway, it's going to do a good job. But I'm going to use a piece of scrap shearling here to apply the antique with. But I like to give the shearling just a little bit of a haircut before I do. So I'll just kind of cut along the edges. And basically, I'm trying to get rid of all the little stray fibers that you can pull off this stuff. When you cut this, you know, you're cutting a ton of fibers, and so when you do this with it, you can pull those out. Well, those are going to end up in your antique job, and they're very difficult to pull off the project. So I give it a little haircut so that it looks a little bit more manageable, and then I make sure that's not on my table anymore. But I want to just take and hit that piece and knock any loose fibers off that I have. And now it's a nice manageable piece. It doesn't have a bunch of loose stuff hanging on it. Before I start my antiquing process, I make sure I have lots of paper towels, just folded up into little squares there. I've got my antique, I've got my piece of scrap here of shearling, and then I've also got a bottle of water that if the antique doesn't want to come off in some areas, I might just very, very lightly spray one of those paper towels and get it back off. Apparently there was a whole conversation between the employees the other day that one of them had never seen me do that, because I don't do it every time, I just when I need to. So yeah, when they were talking to a customer, there was a difference of opinion between the employees of no, Aaron does it this way. So anyway, Janie's behind me. She's like, that was me saying that he does it. She's seen me do this a lot more than any of the rest of them have. Anyway, so I'm just going to take a nice bit of it here, and I'm just going to slather it into my tooling. And I'm going to be really careful. I don't want to get it over the edges and all over the background paper and stuff, because then it just starts getting messy as I move this around on my paper. And I just want to really rub it in and make sure that I'm getting it into all the little cracks and crevices of my tooling. I use checkered tools, so there's a lot of area to make sure that the antique gets into. And yeah, and I just literally slather it on. I'm not trying to be cautious or anything other than, like I said, I don't want to get it all over the paper if I don't have to, just because that helps with cleanup and everything. Because if you end up with a big glob of this on the back of your leather or the side of your leather and you don't realize it, you could very easily end up staining something else later if you hadn't wiped that off. Okay. And then I want to get even my dyed areas, I want to make sure that they're covered in it too, because like I said, this is going to just slightly tint the dye as well, and I want to make sure that it's even all the way around. Now I'll take the cleaner end of this and just kind of dab off the extreme excess, and then I'm going to grab my paper towel and start wiping it back off. And that's going to look really nice. Really brings out and highlights your tooling and everything. I'm kind of wiping it around the inside of the ring there in case I got some on the edge, and I'm going to wipe it around the outside of the ring. Then I'm going to throw that paper towel away, and I'm going to get a clean one, and I'm going to do it again. Now on this one, I will not need to use a dampened paper towel because it's coming off just fine. And people will antique to different levels, I guess you could say. Some people just absolutely love tons of dark antique in there. I just want enough that it's really going to show off my tooling, but not overpower the project. Okay, if I wanted to overpower the project, I'd have just dyed the entire thing dark brown. But I'm very, very happy with how that turned out. It really got into the background there and darkened that a good bit for me. So I've got a lot of great contrast here, and I'm extremely happy with how that's gone. So that's it for coloring this piece. Again, I'm going to do the strap the exact same way. As I look at this, I'll see areas where I need to wipe off a little bit more antique, mostly along the border and stuff. Sometimes it'll really camp out in there and I need to get the excess off of it. Anyway, I'm going to do the strap as well. And then before the build video that will start tomorrow morning, I'm going to burnish the inside and outside of this ring piece. I'll burnish it and then dye it either the same color of brown or even a darker brown for a nice little accent. And tomorrow we're going to do the build video on this, and then we'll have another completed purse. So yeah. So anyway, thanks for watching with me. Again, I'm Aaron Heiser, Maker's Leather Supply, and I hope you have a great day.